Hair grabs, man against woman, woman against woman, man against man. Shave your heads, guys. Hair grabs, you guys, very problematic. Why? Because it breaks all the rules of distance management. If I grab her by the hair, Eve cannot go away and she cannot come in because I have her restricted right here, holding her away. She's not coming in no matter what. So the question is, what do we do? And if you know jujitsu, turning a hair grab into a submission opportunity is very possible. But if you don't, it probably means you're going to frantically be striking while getting struck in the face. And chances are you're going to get the short end of the stick because they're the one who's jerking you around versus you just trying to find the right distance while losing your balance, okay? So we're going to talk about critical hair grab defenses, a few standing up, a few on the ground. But by the time we're done, you're going to walk around with your ponytail swinging like, yo, please, somebody grab it. Because, yeah, like this girl right here. Somebody grab it because if you do, I'll break it and take it, all right? So let's talk about it, starting with the standing arm lock from the initial hair grab here, standing up. Check it out. Got it? Okay, we're coming back. To practice this, we're going to start without grabbing the hair, just in the initial here, and then we're going to add the hair in just a second. So to learn it, hands on the throat right here, just for easier practice. Eve goes 2-on-1, drop step, cross step as she pulls. Look at my arm, right in her armpit now. As she drops with the armpit, she lifts with the hands. That's a broken elbow right there. Okay, one more time, slow motion, double C clamps. Talk about it, Eve.
Double C clamps on the wrist, tight C clamps here. Back step first. So drop step, I'm gonna bring him with me. And as this leg cross steps over, watch the elbow comes over. And now I've got his arm all to myself here. And now from here, we're just gonna squeeze the armpit and apply pressure here.
Woo. Armpit down, hand to the sky, twisting right into it. And if you really wanted to, you can drop your body all the way to the ground. Let's show them how that looks.
Yeah, so it would look more like this. And then once you have it, it would just be
boom, just slam
land
body weight down and drop through their elbow in the process.
Yeah.
And their arm goes with you. Cool. So one more time, a couple more details.
Each other, we're going to be very gentle with this elbow here, but it's important to know how far this move can go.
Let's go slow motion.
Double C grips on the wrist, tight. Now, which hand grabs first?
We'll call it opposite hand inside is how we like to think of it. Opposite hand inside of the double C clamp grip versus the other way, because it won't land as comfortably if you do it this way. So she switches.
And I also like to think about the direction that I'm going. That's going to be the hand that's closest, right? So I'm going to turn away from this arm, not into it. Because if I do, I'm giving my back to
and my arm doesn't break that way. It actually bends in the actual way that the arm safely bends. So the goal is to pull it and
similar
break
to the arm drag principle we've talked about before, where if I do this, I'm in between his arms still. But if I do that, I'm outside of his arms.
Exactly.
He cannot grab me. So always think about that. Bring it across the body here.
And you're going to break the arm in the process.
Correct.
So here we go.
Double C grips tight. I take a step back. And now as I pull him with me, the elbow comes over.
Beautiful.
Now let's just look at the footwork here.
Great.
By itself. So I'm starting facing Henner. My foot goes back. And once I do this rotation, do you notice how now I'm facing the opposite direction? That's how far this foot can come over. So how much I own the arm.
Beautiful.
So drop step, cross step.
Yeah, it's critical. And that cross step really cuts off the opponent there so they're behind you and they can't come around the corner and defend the lock. So she locks me up right here, double C clamps.
C clamps.
Steps, pulls my arm a little bit, cuts me off. Look at this step. She's totally in front of me. If she doesn't do that, if she pulls the arm and leaves her foot where it is, freeze. Keep it over there. Pull and freeze. If she leaves the foot over there, go ahead and put pressure. I can walk around right here and defend against the lock. So she needs to cut me off so that I'm behind her leg and I cannot circle around the front.
And even if I do somewhat of a cross step, but it's not enough, the same thing can happen. Meaning even if I step, but it's kind of weak, he just comes around the front.
Yeah.
Right. So we want to avoid that. And now this is what that looks like. When I do the full cross step, if he tries to come around the front, I keep moving with it. Right. So this is the one time you kind of do want your back to them. But why? Because the arm is outside. They cannot grab you from there.
Beautiful. Perfect. Okay. So once again,
grip.
Double C's.
Decide that we're
Let's talk about some most common mistakes here, even after the pull.
Yeah. So after the pull here, elbow comes over. So let's just talk about the actual break, because to be honest, this is kind of the most challenging part, partly because we're really nervous about our partner's elbow. That happens a lot. We're like, I'm really scared to put too much pressure. The idea is I'm tight on the wrist still. And the reason why is because I want his thumb facing downward. So in order to get there, we started here. Now, if I don't have a tight grip on his hand, as I rotate, I don't really have control of his hand direction. But if it's a tight grip, it's much easier to rotate his wrist where I want it. So I want his thumb facing down, which means his elbow is up. Thumb down, elbow up. And with his elbow up, I'm pinching it in my armpit, tight, tight, tight. And he should already start to feel a little bit suspect here. right? And as I'm doing this, I'm keeping his hand where it is, almost like a little bit pressure up while I'm crunching into the elbow here.
Oh,
Kind of
so
rotating into
tight.
it.
It's like a nice torso twist into his arm as you hyperextend his elbow. It's unbelievable, you guys. Really, really
Yeah.
tight.
Let's talk about owning the arm, because here's the deal. He's not going to give us his arm,
Right.
right? He's not going to give it to us. So we have to take it, which means that this grab and this tug has to be serious. Now, here's the fine line, is that practicing with our partner, we don't really want to like kind of hyperextend or pull someone's arm too hard, but we need to still learn this.
Right.
So
So here's what I say. Pull hard, land easy.
yes, that's
Let's
a
do
good
it.
point.
So it's double grip, big,
Double grip,
strong base, big
step,
pull.
I'm bringing-
But she still comes over and lands like a feather. So there's no chance of popping
And
my
I'm not
elbow.
even squeezing his arm yet. I kind of land here and then I can adjust, especially
Yeah.
in practice. Now, here's the thing. If you're gonna land not perfectly on the elbow, I would rather you land here than land here.
Right, too short.
Too short, he can pull his arm out. So I'd rather own more of the arm and then from here, just adjust.
She slid out.
Because ultimately I want my armpit right over his elbow here. Armpit, rib cage, right on the elbow.
Now, in terms of the actual squeeze here, a lot of people here will try to arch their body up, like lean back. That's not what you want. You guys want to stay right here, hold the hand in the sky, and then drive her rib cage down as she rotates her torso away from me. Boom. Sometimes the bad guy tries to accommodate, tries to accommodate the pressure by getting low right here. That's not ideal. Go back up. If this happens, Eve's going to get a little bit lower in her squat, but she's going to allow my forearm or my bicep to run right into her thigh, and then she's going to squeeze right there and twist through on it 100%. Okay, so just kind of by getting your body lower, the move still works beautifully. May I try?
Yep.
So she's pushing here on my neck or grabbing. Again, we're practicing the hair grab, but we're just, getting prepared here by having the hand on the neck. Double C clamp, step back, pull, cut off step, and get the arm nice and tight, elbow right in my armpit, thumb facing the ground, good base with my back towards her. And once again, as the hand goes up, look how my shoulders are gonna do this rotation. Boom, boom. So I'm lifting and twisting. If you drop your right knee on the ground, look, she's now lower on her shoulder to run into my thigh, and my rib cage is gonna go straight through, look. And I lift the hand as I twist down to the mat right there. It's possible to over rotate their arm, hand on the throat. It's possible if I grab it and I step back and I twist too much, her thumb now went all the way around and is facing up once again. And if her arm bends, it's not gonna break. So look what I do. I only want this. Just enough rotation to where her thumb is facing the ground like Eve talked about. Tight armpit pinch, lift and drive, rotating right into it. Cool, let's try it from the hair.
Yeah, now let's add the hair. So the only difference now is that before we landed with this position with our head up and controlling the hand, now our head is going to be connected to their
That's
hand.
the only difference, the hand.
And the ironic part is it actually makes it way easier to break their arm this way.
And more uncomfortable for the
Yeah, much more uncomfortable.
the arm break receiver, we'll say. So, and when you practice this with your partner, especially if they have nice, beautiful hair, you don't have to grab it and tug on it too much. Just make a fist and put it on their actual side of their head right there, as if you have a solid grip of the hair. A, it's safer and more comfortable, so I'm not tugging on her hair too much. But B, as long as Eve keeps my fist to her head, the move is considered a successful repetition, okay? If at any point this comes off, she failed to keep the connection there, which if I'm really grabbing her hair, is something very important that you keep the hand glued to your head, because that reduces the tug, pull, and discomfort of someone grabbing you by the hair. So she grabs, double grab on the wrist. Watch how it looks on the hair. Watch slow. Look at that. It's already over right there.
And down. So the difference between this variation and that is that when we end in that final position here, again, because his hand's already connected to my head, I don't have to worry about pushing up on the wrist as I'm pulling down, because my head is doing that for me. By him being connected, even by me just doing this, it's automatically connected there.
His grip is your wrist lift. His grip on your hair is used to lift his wrist and pop his own elbow. If you only knew that, he would let go of the hair, but sometimes people are too stubborn. They don't know when to let go. We talked
Right.
about this.
And usually in these situations where we have what we call like counter pressure, meaning like, for example, this, I'm lifting up his hand while I'm pushing down on his elbow.
Mhm.
The goal is that if you have like really adequate counter pressure, that means that nothing moves. So
Interesting.
if I'm doing this, what does that mean? It means I'm pulling up harder than I'm pushing down,
That's a great
right?
point.
Or if I'm doing this, sometimes this happens too.
There's no actual break.
I'm not pulling up with the hand and I'm just kind of pushing down on the elbow. So ultimately it should look, there's no movement. Why? Because the up matched the down, which means we didn't go anywhere.
So you guys are watching that, like, what's wrong with that guy? Why is he in pain right now? Well, the answer is all the energy was released on my elbow. So at that point, it doesn't look like it's going anywhere, but I'm feeling it 100%.
Yes.
And I just wish you guys would understand this quicker so I can take fewer repetitions on the elbow. But out of love and sacrifice,
That's right.
I'll go home, ice it a little bit later.
For you guys.
But be very careful in this one. And here's what's beautiful. Even bald guys can practice this one. Put your hand on my head.
even bald.
So even if you have no hair, you can practice because you're not grabbing. So I just pretend right here, hold tight to my head. I'm going to do a drop step and a cross step. But here's the key: to avoid hurting Eve's elbow on the rollover, make sure that you bend your head down to lessen the impact on her elbow. Watch my head. Look at my head. I kind of pulled her through, but my head is so bent over. If I land on my head like this, it's going to be hurting her elbow right away. So land with your head down, keep it glued to your head. And now as you lift with the hands, twist with the elbow. Oh, or the armpit right into their elbow, I should say. Cool?
Now, one thing that's possible is that if I pull with enough momentum, he's not going to land so softly against me. So that's why we need kind of a strong base and to be ready to, almost anticipate that.
Right. So she
it's
might
almost like
turn.
if I pull with him, boom, he runs into me. Look at that base, that adjustment. Whereas if I was like so committed to this, I may have fallen forward. So
Right.
know that as I'm pulling him, he's going to run into me. So I
Boom.
need to be here,
Ready.
adjust my base, and then find the elbow and
Beautiful.
break.
There it is, you guys. So we suggest that you start by practicing with the hand on the throat just to get the momentum and kind of feel that crossover. And then put the hand on the head, close that fist, lock that wrist. And if the hand detaches from the head, it was not a successful rep because you didn't keep it glued, which is part of the technique and a critical aspect, especially if they're grabbing for real.
That's right. Now with this move, this is a good problem solving technique, meaning that you might run into some things where you're with your partner and like, it's not quite right. Go back through the lesson, think about all the details, but more importantly, start working with each other and say, what did you feel? When I do this, how does that feel? And when I do that, using those problem solving skills, just working with one another and trying everything a little bit differently until you get it right.
A few inches of adjustment, a few inches of position, of how your knee is bent. Yeah.
Or armpit squeeze, whatever it might be.
A lot of times we'll see people squatting too much right here, push my chest. They pull, they cut off, and I see them doing like this, like they think this is the break. No, it has nothing to do with squatting. Find your base. The house doesn't move anymore. Now, as this goes up, this goes down. Boom, and it's a rotation that happens with the torso. And you got to drive into that elbow. And with a few minor adjustments, if we have a student here who's having trouble, we'll adjust a few details and suddenly their arm is popping for sure, or they're feeling that pressure 100%. Remember, pull hard, land easy on the crossover because this one sucks when they land
that's
hard.
a good reminder that with this, the moment you feel pressure, it's time to tap. Don't wait for it's not. And we have some people that are like double jointed and their arm like bends backwards. Just know that if you feel pressure on the elbow, all you need to feel is pressure. And then you know that they found the right place. That's the most important thing. So we don't need to wait till our arm is about to break to tap.
Listen, there's no such thing as double jointed, by the way. Bring me a double joint and I'll bring you a break.
I'll bring you a double break.
Listen, it's going down. Practice this and we'll see you in the next slice. Hair grabs on the ground. We've already talked about the trap and roll, where if they're grabbing you by the hair, you use their trap against them and you roll them in the same direction. Let's take a similar mindset of opportunity-seeking ability here and apply it from the guard. If I grab Eve by the hair from the guard, she can't do the trap and roll for all reasons we've already discussed. I'm not mounted on her, therefore her hips cannot thrust me out.
I also can't sit up into him right here
Right.
to get stage one because he's controlling my distance by controlling my hair.
Right.
I also cannot shrimp and I can't extend because he's got such a good grip on my hair that I can't push my head fully away to do a guard get up.
There you go. So what can we do? We have a couple options. Let's talk about them. Starting with the straight arm from the guard. Check it out. Woo! Broken arm. That's a broken arm from the guard. Believe it or not. Hips go through the elbow. Your elbow only extends to 180. She pops it to 190 degrees. That's game over. Everyone call the hospital. It's done deal. So from here, hair grab. We're going to practice it with the hand on the throat. Okay, hand on the throat or neck area here, shoulder area.
Ultimately, this could also be used with just a hand on the throat or
Someone
a double
choking you,
choke.
you can do the exact same thing.
Same thing. Anytime
Cool.
the hand is in this area.
Anytime the hand is, chest or higher, you can do this technique we're going to teach you right now. Labeled hair grab defense, but really it could be any grab from the upper body. Starting with the hand on the neck, Eve, walk us through the step basics.
So I'm going to secure the wrist. I'm going to frame the neck, foot on the hip, turtle pivot, and then the leg goes around the head for the break.
Beautiful. A little more details.
Sure. So from here, I'm securing the wrist. This should look similar, right, to the cross grip from the trap and roll.
Mhm.
However, that's where the similarities end. Now this arm's going to come across and brace his shoulder. This is just in case he's too close and I need to create distance. Now the foot goes on his hip and I'm going to turtle pivot. One more time. Turtle pivot to get this perpendicular angle. And now I can bring the leg around his neck, squeeze the heels down, hips up. Ooh, for the break. One more time. So here, control the wrist. Brace the neck. Remember, we've done this brace before where grabbing the shoulder and driving with the elbow. That's what it is, just to create space. Now, obviously, if he's kind of further up, I won't really need to do that because I don't need to create distance here.
Mm.
So it's just kind of a post on the shoulder if we need to. And then the foot goes on the hip. Now, this turtle pivot is everything for this move.
Mm.
Once we understand this, we understand the arm lock. Now, the hard part about this is now that we're like expert shrimpers, what do we want to do? Shrimp all day.
Mm.
So we're gonna think shrimp, but this is what the shrimp would look like if we did it here.
Bring it over my head now. Problem is now her hips are way too far. My arm slips right out. So the difference between turtles and shrimps, you guys, this is biology 101, you guys. We got to know. Check it out.
So here, cross block, foot on the hip, and now instead of shrimping, I'm gonna turtle pivot, which just means I'm gonna like think about my pivot point is like right on my belly button.
Yeah, versus here. A shrimp out, your pivot point is here. Go back. A turtle pivot, your pivot point is right here. Do it by yourself.
So it's
Look.
really just.
She just barely, her hips go that way and her head comes this way every time, small. And all you're trying to do is create a 90-degree relative angle to your opponent's torso because you have to be perpendicular in order for these two legs to land like this. See how my head's facing this way and Eve's head's facing that way? That's perpendicular. But to create that, and we're in a parallel initial position, she has to get a slight turtle pivot off in her angle in this direction.
And that's why having the foot on the hip, what it does is it kind of keeps him in place. It keeps him facing this way while I make that adjustment.
Boom.
So now I'm
And
perpendicular.
look how her
Now,
hips came up and she's now biting as high as she can, almost like her foot's trying to touch my head and her knee is biting in my armpit there to keep her hips up and keep that maximum angle.
and what's interesting is if I don't do that, this turtle pivot will actually be really hard and kind of limited. Like this is as far as I can
Well, she
go.
just flatten her back.
Yeah, and also this leg kind of, it's like, it's weighing me down. I need this leg to come up and bite the armpit, and that helps me actually get a better angle. So now that I'm completely perpendicular, I can, if I need to, I can push his head away. Like they might be too close and you might have a hard time bringing this leg around, whether it's flexibility or just too much closeness here. So I'm gonna push his head away if I need to, and now the leg comes around. Now let's look at this final position. I'm controlling the wrist and keeping it tight to my chest here, first of all. Now also look at my heels. I think what's kind of misunderstood about this movement sometimes is people think you're like pushing away here, like pushing against him, but that's not really the case. Think instead, almost like a bridge where your heels go down and your hips go up here until the break.
Another very common mistake, stay there, is that they bridge and this hand comes off the chest during the squeeze. So watch, they start lifting their hips all high to the hand. Completely useless, you guys. This has to remain stapled to the chest so that as she does heels down, hips up, ow, game over. That actually creates the tension in the elbow and prevents me from accommodating the movement because my hand is nailed to her chest and all the pressure is released on my elbow joint right there. Major. Let's try it again. So we can try it from the hair now as well. So once you become familiar here, and let me show you one detail before we show the hair. Let me show one detail about how a partner can help their partner become proficient in this technique. So if we're here and Eve is trying, let's say she does her cross grip, by the way, always the opposite hand, hook the wrist. The same side hand comes over the arm. If you go under, it's not going to create the effective landing spot. So over the desired arm and blade right across the neck. Her hand is behind my shoulder, creating a nice active blade in my throat right there. Her foot goes on my hip right here. Look, her foot goes on the hip and she makes her turtle pivot. If someone has trouble with this technique, it's going to be because they're having trouble creating that perpendicular angle. So how can I assist her? Take the hand that's on the neck, hook it behind her neck, take your other hand, put it on her pelvis right here. So one is here, one is here. And those two together, I'm going to use, and I'm going to say, okay, Eve, lift that leg up and we're going to pivot this way. But I literally pushed her hip, pulled her neck, and I created that turtle pivot, allowing her to bite high at my armpit right now with her leg. Beautiful. And now she's going to bring the leg around the head, all the way around.
And I also want to talk about bringing the leg around the head right here. I'm using my leg on his shoulder to kind of hold my hips up to bring that leg around, as opposed to this leg was not tight. It's like my hips would sink as I came down. So keep those hips activated by squeezing their back or their shoulder here with your calf. So around the world it goes. Now look at this arm. It's here. When does it leave? When someone else takes its spot.
Boom.
The leg. So now this has a job here. Now it has a new job, which is securing this arm to the chest, tight. And just a little information about this. If you have to choose a side, we want to go to the south side, meaning it will break quicker and faster if the arm is down here as opposed to too far north. And you can see his elbow is almost starting to bend the different direction here. So we want to bring it around to the south if possible, and then keep it tight, heels down, hips up.
Perfect. Heels down, hips up. That's a great point.
Yeah, it's like a bridge.
Great detail. Great detail. Sometimes when you're practicing this move, you guys, you'll pivot, and as you bite your legs over their body, they'll lose their balance. It's pretty normal. People just tend to be off balance. It's kind of legs hitting them from a weird angle, and let's be aware of that. Let's also talk about the safety tip of not clipping your leg on the high part of my neck to not crank my neck, and make sure that your leg lands in the flushed base of my neck for my safety.
Sure.
So from here, and we can even do that from here on the neck one more time. So Eve is here. She does her bite foot on the hip. I help her turn her hips if she needs it. And now she brings her leg around. Safety. Don't land your leg on the top of my crown. If it hits right there, it's going to crank my neck back pretty awkwardly. So just make sure that you get all the way around and hit my actual neck with your leg.
And a big part of that is my hips. If my hips, if you can see, my hips are still kind of facing that way right now. So the final part of this making my body perpendicular is like swinging my legs around and switching my hips. So watch this. It's like swing, swing, swing. My hips rotate. And now the leg comes around. If the hips stay facing this way, it's going to be really hard to get this leg over. And that's where I see people kind of come and do difficulties with this. So the hip turns. If he falls over, keep the arm. Scoot your hips in tight. Heels tight to his armpit. And now go back slowly and controlled. And we
It's the
squeeze.
same thing. Heels down, hips up, hold the hand tight to your chest.
Mhm.
But the fact is, when I lost my balance, how Eve sat up and kind of adjusted her hips underneath my arm to ensure that flush hip to shoulder connection and maximize the break potential thereafter.
Yep, keep the arm there.
Cool. Let's try from the hair now. Check it out.
Mhm. So hair grab. Now the only difference here is just going to be a little bit more awkward in terms of my head positioning, but the rest of it is pretty much the same. So I'm controlling hand across here, foot on the hip, and now we get this angle and it comes down. So now I don't really have control about where his hand goes, meaning I can't bring it to the south, but I can still keep it connected here. And I am going to commit, even though he's grabbing my hair, I'm still going to keep it committed and break.
Cool. Solid move, you guys. Now, some of you guys are wondering what if, and that's easy practice to go from I would start on the neck and then at the end, tie up the hair, and you guys can try it. And it's a little tuggy, but definitely worth the practice if you're practicing hair grab defenses. The possibility of Eve pivoting, spinning, and throughout this process, the attacker here changes his mind and tries to rip his arm out. And halfway through her spin, her hips are pretty loose, so my arm can potentially slip out. And if that happens, we just wanted to throw this in here because, it's just a little bonus detail for you guys. So Eve gets ready. I'm on her throat, or I'm stroking her. She starts to spin. I pull my arm out. Watch what she does. Boom. Because what did we tell you? Triangle chokes are all the same. All that matters is that you get to a position where there's one arm in and one arm out. Okay. And in this situation, when he rips his arm out of the arm lock attempt, guess what he does? He puts himself in a triangle setup. And triangle setup is our best friend. Look, all you gotta do is hip up, clear the arm, control the head, put on the hip, wiggle back, bite, grab, and the game is over.
Yeah, think of like arm locks and triangles are like cousins. So when one fails, the other should be right there, but they're very closely related.
Super related. I'd say more like brothers, to be honest. Like they're even tighter than cousins. Because literally, if I want to catch someone in a triangle, I'll go for the arm lock just so they pull their arm out. And when it happens, the triangle is right there on the back door waiting to capitalize. So beautiful technique. Let's go from the guard. Hand, make sure you really help your partner create that 90, you guys.
Yeah, and we want to get to a place where instead of doing it step by step, we want to kind of make it all one fluid movement. And so instead of 1, 2, 3, 4,
Right.
loop around 5, we want it to feel like this. And it doesn't
Smooth.
have to be fast. It just is like all at once, I'm getting the angle, that legs coming up in here, right? So we just want to think about making it all simultaneous,
Critical.
all at once, boom.
It's that simple. The move is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Until 1, 2, 3, and 4 become 1 and 5 becomes 2, then it's 1, 2. And when your life is on the line, it's better to have a 1, 2 that you have to employ or utilize than 5 different steps that you have to think about in that moment. But there is no shortcut. It's just practice. So merging these steps into one, let's wait until you develop that muscle memory and that comfort, but really start to work in that direction. And if while you're going for it, they rip their arm out, hey, thank them for the triangle gift. It's all good. And remember, this is a hair grab. This is a choke grab. This is a grabbing your shirt or grabbing your clothing right there. Any hands in your upper chest or throat area, when they grab, you're going for it. In fact, if you're on the bottom of the guard in stage one last variation, if you're in the bottom of the guard stage 1, connecting right here, and this person starts to swim inside and grab her neck right here. Look, as I'm pushing away, look what she does. Boom, she just spins and catches it. You guys understand? So when someone's pushing off Eve's body, she might be in punch block series. They start to push off. She's like, all right, I could swim, I could push them away to stage 3, or I can take the gift. See,
So many
final
options.
answer.
Yep.
Cool. Have fun, you guys. Practice this one. And then we have one more, like kind of crazy one, but we think you're ready. Here we go.
So we've learned 2 hair grab defenses, one from standing, one from ground. Now let's go back to that standing one. This is great. If the arm is extended, maybe they're kind of pushing you away. I take it, break it down here, right? Now the problem is with this, the arm is not extended. And if it's more like they're controlling me here and maybe punching. Now I might be trying to, I can't take this arm. Too controlled, it's too tight, it's too congested. So we've got to do something else with this.
Check it out.
Oh. Ow. Ow. What'd you get?
Let's do it now, slow motion. Okay, check it out, you guys.
Yeah.
So from the hair grab, what did you do?
Yeah, so from the hair grab, the first order of business was blocking this punch.
1.
If I need to. And now I'm gonna secure his head. I'm gonna pull guard, which means I bring him into my guard from here. And now you know the rest. Foot on the hip. Woo, break the arm.
Beautiful.
So we're kind of combining the standing and ground. The basic idea is that if I can't break his arm standing, I have to do it on the ground.
That's what's up.
And normally we would never recommend that you just go to the ground by choice, right? Especially in a sexual assault scenario, we just want to get out. We don't need to break his arm, we need to get out. However, he's got our hair, so
It's so bad.
we
It's
can't
so
get
bad.
that distance we need, and we can't even come in. And especially if he's punching, it's like, this is worst case scenario pretty much.
It's the
So we
better of
have
2
to do
evils,
what
you
we
guys.
gotta
You're either standing up, getting rocked with punches, or the mindset, because when you're standing, it's 2 appendages versus 2 appendages. The difference is he has a grip that affects the utility of your appendages and your limbs. But when she pulls guard, watch what happens.
do. Mhm.
Look, it becomes freeze. 2 appendages against how many? 1, 2, 3, 4. You guys, guard pulling is so legit. You're introducing new elements into the fight, which is not the case standing up. Her legs cannot control my hips, manipulate my balance, create angles, and bite bodies when she's standing. Okay, so from the ground, we can pull him in, lock him up, and then create all the angles. And that's when his hair grab goes from an asset into a major liability for his elbow. Okay, so once we're here, the exact
So from
same
here,
thing.
now we were in this position, we're just gonna
It's called the
cross.
Yeah, it's called the X. You just kind of X your arms over, cross your arms over
Put your
there.
arms here,
Boom.
and now foot on the hip, we're gonna go for the arm.
Nice. And the foot on the hip is cool, but there is a more advanced variation that
There
since
is.
we're here and we're getting deeper in the program, you guys qualify to learn,
Mhm.
which is she runs the X right here,
Mhm.
freeze. Without putting her foot on the hip, just watch Eve's leg right here. She's just gonna extend her leg. Look at that. Creating a beautiful perpendicular angle and a nice bite. Woo-hoo. You can do that, or you can do foot on the hip. Both are fine, but because sometimes his hips are so close. Put your foot on my hip.
Mhm.
Her foot can't even get on my hip. You guys understand? But sometimes they're further and the foot reaches perfectly on the hip. There you go. So if his hips are super tight, that's where you do the thigh push. Look, 1, 2, and she's over. Woo.
Cool. Go back to standing. Let's talk about this initial position.
Yeah, like the other side.
Mhm.
Cool.
So from here again, he might be striking with his arm, so we want to block first.
Look,
And now you know these punch blocks. You've seen them before. We're grabbing the triceps and the elbows go out.
hand back, forearm out, elbow wide. It's a forearm structured humerus bone that is blocking my hand from touching her face right there. Beautiful structure. She just follows along.
And now from here, I'm going to go straight to controlling his neck. So look at this. One hand is on his forearm. And I'm also, because again, he's pulling on my hair, right? So the more I can secure his hand to my head, the less it actually tugs on my head. Right? Because now it's like I'm like becoming one with his hand. So even if he pulls on my hair, I might just kind of go, look. Can you imagine if that was holding my hair and he did that? How much pain I would be in.
That was pretty dope demo.
That was. We should try that on the dance floor sometime. Next wedding, we'll do that.
I'm on.
Yeah. So so he's securing. I control this. I keep this. I even use my head to like make it really
And you notice how
secure and tight.
Eve's hand went from my arm to my neck.
To
When
the
she's
neck.
ready to pull guard, she doesn't want to pull on the arm. She blocks the arm, but she pulls on the neck ideally. Okay? Or you can go straight to the neck. Sometimes you're here and you just grab up and you just go and you're ready to rock and
Right,
roll.
so
That's also okay.
Hand on the forearm, securing this down. Other hand on the neck. And when I say on the neck, it's like I'm grabbing around and I'm still kind of driving with this elbow here. It's like a support,
Nice
just kind
move.
of keeping distance, right?
So I can't clinch her either.
Yep,
That's
and
great.
also as we go down to the ground, I don't want him crashing into me, right? So it's kind of keeping this distance here, and now it's the guard pull. Okay, so let's talk about this. I don't just want to fall over to the ground because we don't really know where he's going to end up. He has to end up in between my legs because that's the guard. So look at this. I'm going to take a small step forward. I'm going to scrunch down, and I'm going to shoot back with my leg out wide so that he naturally lands right in the guard. And then from here, we make the X.
Boom.
Right? And just
One
practice
wrist.
that a few times.
Boom. Whoop-ah. Clack.
I love those sound effects.
Foot
You
on
know,
the hip.
either foot on the hip, or you can make that turn here and bring it around and break.
Beautiful. And if you want to get really fancy, I'm just gonna do this to let Eve show off a little bit. From the neck right here, hands by the neck. Watch, she just does hips, bite, slow. No hands even. Hips, bite. Look, hips, bite. Hips, those are all thighs, bite. Hips, bite. Hips, bite.
Okay, I think we get it.
I know, I just want to let you show off a little more. Okay, let's go.
Thanks so much. So back to the concept, it's crazy because we're essentially saying someone's trying to fight you, bring him to the ground, put him in between your legs, right? Which likely before this program would have sounded absolutely ludicrous. But here's what's interesting about that. If I knew for a fact that escape was not an option, meaning I was locked in a room with somebody and there was no door to get out, right? There was no safe place in that room. My only option for me would be to bring him to the ground because I don't want to trade punches with anyone. And if I can't get distance, then I want to bring them in. I want to bring them into my guard because that's where I have options.
Yeah.
So not only, you know, if there's no other option, the guard is actually the best option.
Because your legs come in and your legs wrapping around their hips gives you much better distance control than a freestanding adult male who is just flying around, jumping, twisting, throwing, stable on his feet. As soon as you put them in horizontal, at that point, they're not on their feet. So they don't have the same stability, the same power, the same punches, or the same distance management capability. So if you know jujitsu, you're much safer here with them in your guard than you are here, both people swinging wildly because they're
Two
much
against two, right?
much better chance. 2-on-2 versus 4-on-2. The guard is the secret weapon of jujitsu, but your confidence in the guard is only so much as your ability in the techniques that we're presenting here from the guard. So practice, you guys, practice this. Lock an upper body, pull them in the guard. And it's just so important that we frame this and kind of put this into perspective for you guys, because we understand that some of you are like, why are we going to the ground? Why would we go to the ground? If
Not
that's
our
where he,
first choice.
if
yeah.
that's where he wants to go, why are we
If
going
we
there?
can escape.
It's
yeah.
the better of two evils, you guys. You don't want to be standing getting cracked. So you lock up, you tie up, you squat, and you shoot back. Can you show us a solo demo of the guard pull?
Sure. So from here, I'll do the solo demo for the whole thing.
Cool.
So here he's grabbing, I secure his arm. Now, so it's the one that's grabbing my hair is the one that's gonna clamp down on his arm. The
Forearm
other
grab.
one's gonna control his head. And now from wherever we are, and feel his base a little bit too. I'm gonna step in close, step, and then I'm gonna squat down and watch me shoot backwards. Like here, all the legs come out, right?
So nice.
And around they go, and now into the guard.
Perfect. Yeah. And if you don't shoot your hips back the way Eve is showing, the risk is, try me here.
Mhm.
The risk is if she locks up and I'm here, boom, and she's just kind of walks forward and she,
Just kind of
then the
sit
risk
down.
is this. Now, the guard pull did not pay dividends because they've achieved the mount, which means their legs are controlling your body. Now they have 4 against 2 instead of 2 against 4 for Eve.
That's right.
Cool. So let's practice this, you guys. Let's believe in these hair grabs. Let's believe in the tie up. Let's believe in the guard pull. And then once we land, swing those hips, get those blades in position and slam those legs over the top and make them regret that they ever even looked at your hair.
You can look at my hair.
I know, I'm safe. So in the context of a real street fight, if someone grabs you by the hair, it's either the greatest impediment or the greatest gift. And the only difference is whether or not you know jujitsu.
Yeah, because when they do, if you can fixate their hand to your head, reposition your body so that you can break their arm, that is what jujitsu is all about.
So what's the moral of the story?
Don't mess up my hair.